Now that happened on October 7th, and it's since been proven in 3 different cases. It happened, unfortunately, after...
it's been proven that Israel killed its own civilians, or it's been proven that they intentionally killed their own civilians to prevent Hamas from using them as leverage. Obviously, Israel killed some of their own civilians. Now they were killing their own civilians. Incidentally, while targeting Hamas militants who were trying to take their civilian hostages, there's like absolutely zero moral equivalence.
Was what Hamas did on October the 7th an act of terrorism?
I would say that the killing by the Israeli Air Force of Israeli citizens was an act of terror. I would say...
Kill me. How?
Rupert Murdoch, News Corp International, which employed you for several years, which actually it employs you now. Okay, we're getting to the...
Oh my God, is he doing the Zionist cabal funding for Piers Morgan too? If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to help with the algorithm, and consider sending a donation through YouTube Super Thanks to directly support the channel, and I'll make sure to reply. Israel's more enemies than ever before. Lowkey versus Piers Morgan. I have no clue who this guy is. Should I know who this guy is? Lowkey?
Given that you categorize what Israel did to...
Where's the actual start of it?
Just for a minute. At some point, Lowkey as a rapper, a playwright. Because I don't cover this from supporting either over the other.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah. Well, many people know Lowkey as a rapper, a playwright, and a poet, but it's fair to say they even more know him as a fierce advocate for the rights of Palestinians and a fierce critic of Israel. First and only time we've spoken was in the immediate aftermath of October the 7th. Israel and its supporters couldn't see beyond the horrors of that atrocity. Its critics were angered by how quickly it eclipsed decades of Palestinian suffering and heralded a great deal more. A lot has happened since then. But has anything really changed? Kareem Dennis, better known as Lowkey, joins me in the studio now. And from Washington, D.C., I'm joined by Lebanese-American author and activist Brigitte Gabriel. Well, welcome to both of you. Lowkey, we never met, so it's good to meet you. We had a pretty fiery exchange last time when I was in New York and you were here. Passions were running very high. I think it's fair to say from my experience of debate since, there's been no dilution in the way people feel about it. If anything, I think views are getting more and more entrenched as it goes on. What is your feeling about where we are now with this war and indeed the widening conflict with Israel apparently planning a ground incursion into Lebanon?
Well, that initial interview...
All Israel fault. Israel's the aggressor.
Which have since come clearly to fruition. So the first thing that I stated was that Mark Regev belongs in The Hague. Israel is currently in the ICJ charged with genocide. I also said that what Israel was doing in Gaza in an accumulative way over decades would amount with the military operation that they were about to launch to genocide. And the third thing that I said, which has also now been proven...
Is this trans and war?
The Israeli military unfortunately implemented the Hannibal Directive on October 7th. And just so viewers are aware, is when Israel... Of course, it was initially developed in Lebanon while trying to suppress the Lebanese population and stop them from battling the Israeli occupation. And it's whereby Israel takes measures to kill the captives who are Israeli that have been taken by the other side. Now that happened on October 7th, and it's since been proven in 3 different cases. It happened, unfortunately, after...
it's been proven that Israel killed its own civilians, or it's been proven that they intentionally killed their own civilians to prevent Hamas from using them as leverage. Obviously, Israel killed some of their own civilians. Now they were killing their own civilians. Incidentally, while targeting Hamas militants who were trying to take their civilian hostages, there's like absolutely zero moral equivalence between Hamas intentionally trying to take civilians hostage to get to either use them to end the war or to release prisoners in the West Bank, versus Israel defending itself and incidentally killing those hostages. To my knowledge, it hasn't been proven that Israel intentionally killed them with the Hannibal doctrine purpose of not letting Hamas use them as like negotiating tactics or whatever. If they did that, it's probably bad, but even that I don't think would be morally equivalent to what Hamas does at all. But
by Israel, to be clear.
It hasn't, though. It's been denied by certain upper echelons of the Israeli political establishment, but there have been key figures within the Air Force that have acknowledged that this has taken place. It's also been revealed by the Al Jazeera investigation, and other places too have gone very deep into it.
But you wouldn't say that the absolute vast majority of people killed and wounded on October the 7th were indeed killed and wounded by Hamas, because apart from anything else, Hamas were boasting about it and filming it as they were doing it.
I think actually the majority of people that were killed on October 7th and off the back of the October 7th were the Palestinian fighters that entered into what is considered to be Israel.
Well, we know
because they were killed, they were run over by cars, their bodies were dismembered. There's footage that came out of them being killed.
You feel sorry for the Hamas?
No, I'm stating objective facts.
That usually we're talking about. Usually we don't really care about militant deaths. I would assume we would all agree that obviously Israel killing the militants who crossed over from the Gaza border to attack Israeli civilians. What is perfectly legitimate. That's not a bad thing. What?
As a journalist that has researched this topic.
But what about the 1,200 people who they murdered and the 7,000 they wounded?
No. hundreds of those people were killed when Israel implemented the Hannibal Directive.
That's simply not true.
Oh my
It
God.
simply is true. And I encourage you, in the spirit of journalistic inquiry and curiosity, to really look that up.
It's already been thoroughly investigated.
It absolutely has not.
But it has,
It's been investigated by Al Jazeera. It's been investigated by trustable news sources that have found this to be the case.
It's not true that hundreds of people in those named casualty
Trustable news sources only cites Al Jazeera.
numbers on the Israeli side
were killed by Israel.
No,
it's a fact. It's a documented fact. And you know what else?
Wait, how many did he say?
Casualty numbers on the Israeli side
were killed by Israel.
No,
it's a fact. Be the case.
No, it's not true that hundreds of people in those named
Hundreds of people
on the Israeli side
were killed by Israel.
No,
it's a fact.
It doesn't even matter because clearly the intent matters. Clearly Hamas was purposefully targeting civilians, and then Israel may have been, or no, I mean, they definitely did to some extent. I don't know if it was hundreds, but incidentally killed their own civilians while defending themselves from the people purposely targeting civilians. These are radically different things.
Documented fact. And you know what else? If you were to study those cars which were put forth as
evidence
that
inflated by Gaza militants being considered part of Israeli
the order
victims.
came directly from the Israeli Air Force. This is a mass Hannibal. This is a dead zone. No cars will
Did you watch the documentary?
Like, I don't know how true that is. Like, I know some of the bodies were burned, so it's hard to identify. That's why they revised it down. Originally, wasn't it like 1,400, but they revised it down to 1,200 because of that, because they had mistakenly identified some of the bodies as that were burned as Hamas, as Israeli when they were actually Hamas militants. Didn't they? I thought that's why they revised it down in the first place. Israel should have the identity of more or less everyone who was killed.
Did you watch the documentary last week on BBC Two?
No.
About the music festival, right? You literally see Hamas fighters with their GoPros going from car to car, murdering people.
That happened.
True.
Yeah, that happened.
Why are you trying to diminish the scale of what was going on?
I've just said that happened. That doesn't equate to diminishing what you've just
doesn't
stated.
say hundreds
You're
of
diminishing Apache helicopters bombing cars that contained civilians. You're diminishing all of the Israeli captives that have been killed by Israeli...
Wait. I'm still like, why? Like, why were they bombing cars with civilians? Why? Like, what's the...
The airstrikes. Israeli captives...
Because the civilians were being taken hostage by Hamas because they were defending themselves from Hamas, who is purposely targeting those civilians?
...have come out of Gaza and said very clearly that actually they were scared of being killed by Israeli...
Why are there hostages at all?
Well, this is, of course, an issue of 70 years of occupation, of dispossession,
oh my God.
You wouldn't support taking hostages, including Holocaust survivors and babies. You wouldn't support that.
I wouldn't take hostages, no.
So should they hand them back?
I think if you look historically at where the return of
oh my God.
actual hostages has happened, you look at the case of Gilad Shalit, this was a case where an Israeli soldier was given back in exchange for the release of Palestinian prisoners. What you've actually
prisoners,
seen in
yes.
this case,
LEC uses prisoners and not hostages. Okay.
There's a massive increase of Palestinian prisoners who are being tortured. There's been examples of rape within Israeli military camps. The rapists...
I guess he did at least use the word prisoners. So he hasn't at least yet drawn a direct equivalence between the Gaza hostages and the West Bank prisoners. Our earlier notes in IP so far, are there more pages that you have cooking? I mean, I think I've only well, first of all, welcome to the stream. I mean, I have a lot of notes on a lot of things.
have come out and become celebrities within Israeli society.
I think the Israel-Palestine ones are the only one that are public. I don't think these are public yet, even though it's in my workspace. So I wanted to make it public, but yeah, I don't know.
68% of the Israeli population say they oppose the prosecuting of people that have been implicated in rape within the dungeon system. And if you really look at it, Israel has far more chance of returning hostages by negotiating for their release than by airstriking them. What Israel has done as part of this campaign is airstrike and kill its own captives.
How would you have responded on October the 8th if you were running the Israeli government?
And the occupation.
Ultimately, it is within the interests of everybody, especially those who identify as Israelis currently, to end Zionism. Zionism has dispossessed and disempowered and killed people on an industrial scale. Its maintenance requires 4 generations of Palestinian refugees scattered throughout the Middle East, the highest population of refugees there is in the world. Its maintenance requires the constant repression.
It's, again, Schrodinger's refugee. Half the population in Gaza is refugees, and the other half from 1948, and the other half are children who are 10 years old.
Of Palestinian hopes for a better world.
Which I think is completely wrong. So I believe all Palestinian people should have exactly the same rights as you and I and every Israeli.
And that requires the end of Zionism, so therefore you support the end of Zionism.
I don't agree with what has clearly been a form of occupation, okay? But putting that to one side, I also don't agree with Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, funded by Iran, armed by Iran, launching wave after wave after years and decades of terror attacks on Israel.
Do they have air forces? Let me ask you a question.
Let me ask some questions.
Do they have air forces?
Now he's drawing the power dynamic.
No, I'm saying there is a complete difference between one of the most powerful armies in the world, which has literally a key unit within the Israeli military Unit 9900 is the visual unit which uses satellites in the sky that can pick off a bit of chewing gum on your shoe, okay? You're talking about actors that are shooting rockets which do not have precise targeting against one of the most powerful air forces in the world.
Why are they firing indiscriminate rockets? Glad we bite that bullet.
You're talking about asymmetrical warfare. But you know the thing that Israel doesn't remember, and which Israel has to know and must know, that winning a war is not about killing on an industrial scale the weakest among the population you are targeting, which Israel excels at, which is the essence of Zionism. Winning a war is about the largest amount of people being convinced of your viewpoint. If we use that metric to understand this war, Israel has lost in Gaza and it will lose in Lebanon because Israel has more enemies around the world than ever before. More people are critical of Zionism than ever before. More people understand it to be essentially an anti-life ideology, which is causing mass human suffering.
I know Gen Z is leaning pretty pro-Palestinian. I don't even know. Obviously, tensions are much higher in the Middle East. Lebanon or Hezbollah is attacking them, and Iran is attacking them. I don't even know. Has support for in aggregate has support for Israel decreased since October 7th? I don't actually know in the U.S. But I never understand, like, these people like make a they're making like a semi good point here. I just don't understand like how these conditions like ever get like addressed without like Hamas like going away and like terror groups in Palestine stopping targeting civilians. Like how does the blockade ever end if Hamas is in power and they continue to purposely target civilians? Like what? And in fact, like if Hamas doesn't the blockade on Gaza is probably gonna have to be more strict now, right? Because Israel wants to prevent their ability from doing a second October 7th. That's gonna prevent Gaza's ability to rebuild. Like it's gonna keep people radicalized. Like, yeah, has support for Israel decreased since October 7th. So she's not focusing on power balance, air defense being highly developed. No, I don't think the power, when it comes to the moral standing of them, no, I don't think the power balance matters. I think what matters is the intentions behind them. And like Hamas is purposefully targeting civilians, while Israel tries to minimize collateral damage as much as possible while defending themselves against the first group of people. Increased a little bit and then it declined again.
Okay, at the same time, Hamas, Hezbollah are wedded, and make no secret of being wedded, to the destruction of Israel. Destruction. That is a nihilistic form of genocide. The very genocide that its supporters, like you, would say is being waged against their people. They are explicit. We want the destruction of Israel. And they have tried to enact this on October the 7th. And Hezbollah's response the next day, within hours, was to unleash rockets on Israel as well, and to carry on doing it for a year. At some point, Israel obviously was going to respond with massive force to the biggest attack on its people.
Yeah,
obviously, they were going to do that. Hamas knew they would do that. Iran, who were funding it, knew they were going to do that. Hezbollah knew they would do that. Hezbollah knew if they kept rattling the Israel cage with their rockets, that they would get a response of the kind we're seeing now. What they underestimated is that Israel would be quite as successful as they're being right now with Hezbollah and taking out all its command leadership. And you can feel that the momentum has switched now, where Israeli people, in particular, in all the polling, are now beginning to go back to supporting Netanyahu because they believe, rightly or wrongly, but they believe Hamas and Hezbollah when they say we want to destroy Israel. They believe it, and they believe that they have to defend themselves. Do you understand that?
I have a response. The Likud platform, which is its charter, states
oh my God.
Very
from the river to the sea.
There will be no Palestinian sovereignty between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. The Likud charter calls for the complete obliteration of Palestine and all of the rights of Palestinians. That is the core of the issue. One group that you're talking about don't have air defenses and do not have an air force, and are internationally isolated.
As you know.
And are internationally isolated.
And yet they were
the other one has the support of the United States, which has.
They're how many states recognize Palestine at this point? It's like 160 states or something. How many countries recognize Palestine? I mean, they're not like, I obviously don't have support of like the U.S. or whatever, which is like more important. But Palestine recognizes sovereign state by 146 of 193 member states. So if they have 30K militants, how many acceptable casualties are acceptable among civilians? 10 times more, 30 times more? It's not like, I don't know if they like specific ratio is like acceptable and unacceptable. It's just about, it's about when it comes to the moral standing, it's about, it's just about minimizing collateral damage as much as possible. Like that's what's important for the moral standing of them. Yeah.
Over around 1,000 military bases.
It's like what exactly is proportional is going to depend on, it's going to depend on like a lot of things. It depends on the feasibility of other attacks. It depends on how big the direct and concrete military gain is from eliminating that group of 30K militants or whatever. Like
around the world, and of course all of the largesse from literally the US after Israel has taken its terrorist actions, which the former head of the CIA, Leon Panetta, called it a form of terrorism in Lebanon with the pager attack. Right after that, the US has said it's going to give $8.7 billion in military aid to Israel.
Was what Hamas did on October the 7th an act of terrorism then?
I would say that the killing by the Israeli Air Force of Israeli citizens was an act of terror. I would say...
Kill me. How? Oh my God. It's like, it's so absolute total. I don't think it's the most updated one. Absolute total moral blindness. Oh wait, March 11th. Maybe this is the most updated one. That's an act of terrorism? Are you kidding me? A, he won't even answer the question, but B, he immediately just pivots to Israel. And B, like, Israel defending itself from people who are purposely targeting civilians and incidentally killing their own civilians is terrorism. Really? Really?
Palestinians who have lived in camps for several generations. They're not in our shoes. They're not living the kind of lives that we live in the places that we live. Question. But I'm answering your question. To a Palestinian who has suffered their entire life under the boot of Israeli occupation, what you view as justified will not be what they view as justified. The very same way that you denounce figures and define them depending to these particular legislatory definitions throughout history, the very same people. You compared yourself to Nelson Mandela. The ANC were absolutely treated in exactly the same way. The FLN were treated in exactly the same way. The Vietnamese were treated
the ANC who killed what is it literally like 56 civilians like the entire time and like a few bus bombings, and I'm pretty sure they renounced killing civilians like pretty quickly. Like
the same way. Okay. I'm speaking directly to your point. In fact, William Cuffey of the Chartists, these were people that mobilized for hundreds of years to get the right to vote, that didn't own property and were not landed gentry in this country. Do you know what happened to them? They were imprisoned as terrorists. They were massacred at the Manchester.
I know the same history you do, but I simply asked you, given that you categorize what Israel did to Hezbollah with the pages, whether you said it was an act of terror, whether you think what Hamas did to Israelis on October 7th was an act of terror.
As I said to you then, the picture is not clear of what exactly Hamas did to Israelis. There were lies about 40 beheaded babies that pumped out all over the place. Yeah. No. There was so much fake news and lies on what...
He knows that they streamed it, right? They had GoPros. Like you can watch the videos. Like
what happened on October 7th? How can we actually say?
Have you watched the Hamas footage that they took themselves?
Seen bits and pieces.
Bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Literally.
I've seen bits and pieces.
Bits and pieces of people's bodies.
No. What I don't understand.
You haven't seen it?
I don't understand.
What do you want to see?
I'm happy to see it. But
Thanks for the follow. Is another bot? Let's see. Yeah, it's another bot. Damn.
As in, I would like to see these things. But what I'm saying to you that you are seeming to minimize, in my opinion, is the fact that the Hannibal Directive was implemented. If the Hannibal Directive was implemented, if a fake news campaign was rolled out...
A July 2024 Haaretz investigation revealed the IDF ordered the Hannibal Directive to be used, adding, Haaretz does not know whether or how many civilians and soldiers were hit due to these procedures, but the cumulative data indicates that many of the kidnapped people were at risk exposed to Israeli gunfire, even if they weren't the target. In other words, there may well have been a directive issued, says Haaretz, but nobody knows whether anyone was even hit or killed.
Look at the cards. Look at the cards.
Hang on. Why the Haaretz link doesn't work. Israeli Army used Hannibal Directive on October 7th, Hamas attack report. A report on Sunday newspaper based on testimonies of wait, what? What's the new paper? Haaretz? Why doesn't the original Haaretz link work? Not a single vehicle can return to God. That's not a. Is that really the Hannibal Directive? It's just that they didn't want militants returning to Gaza. Kind of makes sense. At this point, the Israeli army is not aware of the extent of kidnapping along the Gaza border, but it did know that many people were involved. Thus, it was entirely clear. It was entirely clear what message was sent and what the fate of some kidnapped people would be. Doesn't the intent to occupy and dominate over decades matter when judging Israeli intent? It depends what they're why they're occupying them. I would say clearly Israel has legitimate interest in some of the occupation, in terms of keeping their own civilians safe, and not allowing Hamas to fucking kill people. Also, I don't Gaza was probably not even occupied post 2005 or October 7th. I don't think it was. I mean, it's blockade, obviously. But it depends on what the intention of the occupation are. Again, if Israel's occupying people to essentially collectively punish civilians with that intention, then yeah, it's a poor reflecting on a more character. If they're occupying them in self-defense, then that's obviously not as bad of a reflection as of the more character.
Nova Festival.
I've watched the video footage of Hamas people in the cars. Here's my point, Lowkey. Here's my point, Lowkey. Let me finish. My point is, you have extrapolated this and you've taken it to hundreds of people in the 1,200 that were said to have been killed were killed by Israelis.
Yeah.
There is absolutely...
That's documented.
There is zero evidence
that
hundreds of people were
Read
killed.
The Electronic Intifada, read The Grey Zone, read Al Jazeera. Look at Al Jazeera documentary.
In July this year, there is no evidence.
No, actually, there is evidence. And
why didn't they...
Haaretz pointed some of it out early on.
They didn't. I've just
At the Eretz crossing, they pointed out that an airstrike was called in.
I've just written to you what they found.
Well, you've read one article which clearly shows that the Hannibal Directive was implemented. Let me ask you a question. If an Apache helicopter shoots at a car, what happens to the car? Do you think Hamas... Let me ask you a question.
I don't even like... What does he think is so bad about this? Clearly these militants probably pose a continued threat to Israel, even if you know for certain that there's one civilian in the car or whatever, or how many ever civilians in a car. Clearly, this could still be a proportional attack. It's not necessarily disproportionate to blow up a car of militants that also happens to have some of your own civilians in it. What does he think is so evil about this even?
Do you think...
or I shouldn't even say, what is so evil about this? I should say, what does he think that makes this equivalent to Hamas? I don't think that... What are your findings? How much credence do you have to the justifications? To what? To what? Huh? What do you... With respect to what?
That the use of AK-47s would cause the damage that was done to those cars fleeing.
I think because you have chosen not to view the footage that Hamas broadcast to the world, you are incredibly ill-informed about this. And my advice, given how engaged you are in this whole thing, I'm staggered you just haven't watched that footage. Then you wouldn't be asking me questions.
But to the wider issue of what we're talking about, this is far, far bigger than one day.
Yeah, but I'm only asking you...
It's almost become a religion. Let's be clear.
But only asking you in comparison. You view what Israel did to Hezbollah. You've been firing rockets at them all year, displacing 70,000 people in northern Israel. You view what they did with those pages as an act of terrorism. I simply said to you, do you think what Hamas did on October 7th is an act of terrorism? And you've been really struggling to give a straight answer. You're trying to distract me by saying Hannibal Directive, hundreds were killed.
Let me ask you a question. Do you believe in the provisions of the Genocide Convention?
I do not believe what Israel's doing is waging genocide.
That's not what I'm asking you. What I'm asking you is Article 1 of the Convention on the Prevention and the Punishment of Genocide says that all parties that are part of this are under obligation.
Haven't got to that part of IHL yet.
To prevent the occurrence of genocide and punish those responsible for its commission. There is a sound argument.
How many people live in Gaza? How many people live in Gaza?
2 million people live in Gaza.
How many have been killed?
Well, I mean, the Lancet Medical Journal has put forth the assertion that 200,000 people's lives have been ended by Israel's operation.
Well, it's completely untrue.
But that's the Lancet Medical Journal. So the Lancet Medical...
If it's the Lancet Medical Journal, it was not like a peer-reviewed study. It was literally just a... I forget the name for it. It was a... I don't even want to call it a paper because it didn't have to go through the peer review process or whatever approval process that you usually have. Also, I'm pretty sure the Lancet number wasn't for the people that had already been killed. I think it was extrapolating into the future as well. Right? Lancet Gaza death toll.
Journal is a more trustworthy source than you. The Palestinians are saying 42,000 as of today.
The Palestinian Hamas...
Yeah, Gaza toll could exceed, but I think it's extrapolating into the future indirect deaths. How much credence did you give the recent presented by Israelis to occupy and dominate? I think clearly there's a pretty grave after October 7th, clearly there's a pretty grave security threat posed by these militant groups. I would give I haven't done a ton of reading into all the negotiations, but I would probably grant Israel more credence than fucking Hamas or even the PA.
No, but that's not how genocide works. Piers. But you know that's not how genocide works.
I'm about to tell you.
But you know that's not how genocide works.
So you don't believe the Palestinian Health Authority numbers?
No, I believe them. But what I'm saying
you think 5 times as many people have been killed?
I've literally just quoted you what the Lancet Medical Association has said, and I've also quoted to you what they
You know why it matters?
But that's also not how genocide works.
I share a lot of your misgivings about the scale
medical
of
journal
what's been going on.
Literally named here. It's going to get more official than that.
Genocide because Israel has the power, should it want to kill all 2 million. Let me finish. They have the power to eradicate every single Palestinian.
Was genocide committed on the Aboriginal people of Australia?
I'm not going to go over the whole thing.
They still exist, so therefore your argument is that they were not subject to genocide following the arrival of Captain Cook.
But do you accept that what Hamas and Hezbollah, when they say the destruction of Israel, that is the purest personification of genocide?
I have clearly shown you that the Likud Charter states within it that the Palestinians will have no sovereignty.
Why do you never answer any questions about the other side, though?
Oh my God.
Because there's a causal connection between what has happened.
But you distract on everything I say.
You're talking to me about organizations that were formed to fight the Israeli occupation. Their response to that occupation is what it is. The occupation exists first. Zionism exists first. What comes after it is a product of that social imbalance.
So you categorize what they were doing as resistance, not terrorism?
They are resistance groups, as the vast majority of the humanity is represented by governments that define them as resistance factions, including the government of Switzerland. What's more neutral than the government of Switzerland? It doesn't prescribe these organizations.
Switzerland says it. I didn't consider that one. Neutral Switzerland says it. Does Switzerland recognize Palestine? I kind of assumed they would if they did that.
You think they're resistance, not terrorists?
Yes.
Okay, we got there. Let me bring in Brigitte Gabriel. Brigitte, you listen to what Lowkey has to say. He's not alone in this thought. I've heard this from many pro-Palestinian guests on Uncensored in the last year. What is your response?
Well, I want to start with the accusation of the occupation. Israel was minding its own business ever since it existed. It reached out to the Arabic world. It wanted to have peace with the Arabic world. In 1964, when the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, was founded, the West Bank was in the hands of Jordan. It was Jordan. And Gaza was in the hands of Egypt. It was Egypt.
True.
So the PLO was founded in 1964, not because of any occupation. They wanted to drive the Jews into the sea and get rid of every single Jew in the Middle East. Israel tried repeatedly. The only reason the Palestinians lost in 67 and they lost Gaza and the West Bank is because they preempted an attack against Israel. And over again, Israel reached out to them to make peace with them. In 2000, Ehud Barak offered them 97% of the territories back, and they refused it again and again and again. In 2005, when Israel withdrew out of Gaza,
does he even know all the negotiation timeline stuff? I doubt he does.
Removed its own people fighting the IDF by force, removed them out of Gaza. Not only to remove the people, they dug out dead Jews' bones from the cemeteries because they knew exactly what the Palestinians are going to do to the cemeteries. So in 2005, when Israel withdrew out of Gaza, there wasn't one Jew alive or dead in Gaza. They turned over the key to them and said, okay, great, now build your own place. You are independent. I know people that Israel even left them the greenhouses. Israel was exporting 50 million flowers to Europe in 2004 out of Gaza. The greenhouses, the fruits, the vegetables, the
only
flowers.
casualties so far, at least.
So the Palestinians can start they can have an industry where they can support themselves. I know a businessman from New York who even raised $14 million to make sure the Palestinians will be able to get paid salaries as they move over and they continue building the greenhouses. And what did the Palestinians do within 24 hours after Israel withdrew?
They burned them down.
Every single Jewish synagogue in the area. They destroyed the greenhouses, ripped out the pipe, and even stole the copper out of the pipe. And then they had an election. So in their first election, the first woman elected to the cabinet of Hamas was a woman by the name Nidal, the mother of al-Muqawama, they called her, the mother of the resistance. And she ran on the platform, I killed 3 of my sons, because she had videos of her sons, she dressing them in suicide bombers to go kill Israelis. She said, I already gave up 3 for the cause, I have another 7 to give. That's why she was elected. So that's a democratic election for Hamas. Israel did not put the Palestinians in a prison in Gaza. Hamas put the Palestinians in a prison in Gaza. Gaza could have been turned into Singapore. They had the money. They had more money.
Oh, there we go. There's the line.
And still do from all over the world. And what did they do with it? Build a tunnel infrastructure underneath bigger than the subway system in New York.
Okay, we got all the talking points perfectly memorized here, I see.
The Palestinians have brought this on themselves again and again and again.
Wow. But do you accept that Palestinians should have the same human rights as the rest of us?
Absolutely. All humans are equal in the eyes of God.
How can they do that? Okay, but here's the thing, Brigitte. But when it comes to this issue of occupation, I was very struck at the start of the response to October the 7th that very quickly Israel was able to turn on or off the tap of energy, the tap of water, the food supply, etc. That is only achievable if you are effectively occupying another country. Otherwise, you're not able to do it. So Israel has had this control over Gaza.
I mean, it's a blockade. I still don't think it probably means that evidence of occupation. It's a blockade. Also, I'm pretty sure most of the water in Gaza is produced domestically. I'm pretty sure it's like 90% of the water in Gaza, or maybe we're thinking of the West Bank. Generally, for weeks of occupation, and the occupying force has to substitute the governance authority, the lawful sovereign. Oh yeah, I don't even know if anyone considers Hamas the lawful sovereign. So I don't know if you could ever even claim it was an occupation. The dismantling of the IDF Gaza military governance apparatus and the assumption of handing over the control of Gaza to Palestinian Authority does not meet the traditional standard for substituting the governance authority of a lawful sovereign. A different standard has been applied by a number of international actors, including organizations such as the International Committee of the Red Cross. This new standard effectively waives the traditional requirements of the physical presence or its substitute the ability to make authority present within a reasonable time, and substitution of governance capacity made for Israel. Such claims ignore the availability of more suitable legal frameworks, such as the law of governing armed conflict, including its provisions on siege and blockade, and international human rights law. Haven't got into the... I think occupation is like 2 more chapters in the book we're reading.
Which to me does not afford those people the same human rights as Israelis enjoy. It's inarguable, because if they didn't have that control, they couldn't turn on and off the energy or the water supplies.
But why did Israel get to this point? Remember, in 2005, they gave them everything, and they said, we are out. The Israelis even fought among themselves because, some people did not...
No, so don't get me wrong. I think Hamas squandered all the money they were given, and Hamas has been the enemy of its own people. And when Hamas did what they did on October the 7th, they knew it was immediately sentencing to death thousands of their own people in the process. They knew that, right? So I think Hamas has got to go. I think Netanyahu has to go as well, and his right-wing headbang cabinet members who do speak in a genocidal way. None of this is ever going to lead to peace. Let me ask you, Brigitte, about Lowkey's...
occupation is chapter 6. Okay, well...
claims about October the 7th. He says that there was this Hannibal directive. It's been much speculated. Harit says that they found evidence there was. The IDF has never admitted there was a Hannibal directive. But it is possible, in the fog of war that day, that I guess some of the casualties came because of Israeli fire. We don't know that. But Lowkey wants people to believe hundreds and hundreds of people who died that day on the Israeli side were killed by Israel.
I don't believe that. That has not proven. And if I have to choose between believing the Hamas talking point, who control the Ministry of Information, and the Israeli IDF, I would believe the IDF because I have lived in Israel as a Lebanese. At one point, I had a home in Lebanon, a home in Israel, and my boyfriend who lived in the West Bank at that time, and I worked as a journalist. And knowing how the IDF operates and knowing how the Israeli military operates, they operate by rules. They don't invent information like Hamas does. And when you are in the throes of things like what happened on October 7th, a lot of people do not know a lot of the facts that happened on the ground. But we do know one thing, that Hamas committed such atrocities, and we're so proud filming it and showing it that will give you goosebumps, that a lot of people can get sick, they cannot view it. And I'm shocked that Lowkey hasn't even viewed the footage. You have to view the footage to understand the monstrosity of the crimes that were committed on that day.
Yeah, I mean, I watched this BBC documentary which had all the footage from the music festival. And honestly, Lowkey, it was one of the most sickening 2 hours of my entire life.
Have you been on social media for the past year?
Yes, I have.
You have seen a constant stream of mutilated children. You have seen a constant stream of people being lifted up out of the rubble. How can you even bring into the conversation 2 hours of footage in comparison to 12 months and 77 years of this type of treatment?
So
I have a question for the guest. I would like to ask this question. Now, the organization Act for America, which you represent and are a part of, seems to be quite the patriotic outfit. It's also been criticized widely as Islamophobic. But I have some questions about the finances of your organization. It's funded by the Fairbrook Foundation, which has funded the Central Fund of Israel, the Zionist Organization of America, and also illegal settlements in the West Bank.
Oh, damn. Wow. I can't believe we're pulling out the funding receipts. The Zionist cabal is funding her. What the hell?
Has been funded by the Becker Foundation, which has funded Christians United for Israel and the Israel Project. In addition to that, your organization was also funded by the Emez Foundation, which funded the Israel Project, the Central Fund of Israel, and the Zionist Organization of America. How, in any way, do you stand for peace when the organization which you front and presumably are employed by is also funded by organizations that are invested in illegal settlement in the West Bank?
Actually, my organization, which I run and I'm the founder and chairman, I not only work for it, was founded after September 11th to protect America against the threat of radical Islamic terrorism.
It shares funders with those building illegal settlements in the West Bank.
You already spoke your mind. Now it's my time to answer. My organization...
People in North Carolina are cut off from the outside world. True.
...was founded to impact policy in the United States, to protect the United States
North
from the threat of
Carolinian. Can confirm. I am in an open-air prison right now.
The terrorist organization are. We work with Muslims. We have Muslims on our board. We have Muslims who are members. We had every single conference we always had a keynote speaker who is Muslim that speaks because they care about America.
You know what? I feel like we're getting. I feel like we're getting a bit. Look, fascinating though it is the makeup of your business. It's not really the point of what this debate is, right?
Right. It's not the point exactly.
But the point I would make, Brigitte, is this: I do think Lowkey has a good point about the settlements, right? What is going on the West Bank with this rapid, aggressive expansion of settlements?
Oh no, she's going to justify the settlements, isn't she? She's going to do it.
Why is
she's all the talking points memorized.
Sorry, you cut out. You mean the settlements in the West Bank?
The expansion of settlements on the West Bank in the last year has been completely outrageous.
Well, look, there's a radical wing within Israel that wants to expand the settlements.
Oh, okay.
And the settlements is an issue. I agree with you.
We're not doing total Hasbro, okay? We're just a little bit of Hasbro.
People are very upset about
You're funded by the same organizations.
What does this have to do with the funding that we're talking about? They are Americans who support the funding of protecting the United States, not Israel. Our work is devoted to protecting the United States. Has nothing to do.
Let's get back to the bigger picture. So, Brigitte, do you condemn the expansion of the settlements in the last year on the West Bank?
Say that again?
Do you condemn the expansion of the settlements on the West Bank in the past year?
Is she like pretending?
Yes, I do. I think they are going overboard.
Okay,
I think somebody needs to revisit looking at the settlement and how they are.
Okay, then that's good. Lowkey, do you condemn what Hamas did on October the 7th?
I have a question for you.
Well, hang on.
Based on what you just said about settlements. I'll answer your question in a second.
She's made an admission that she condemns it.
No, she condemns the expansion of settlements.
Fine.
These people also fund her.
At some point, you're going to answer some of my questions.
Which I have done.
Okay.
He can't. He's not even skilled enough to do like the Mehdi Hassan rhetoric, where he's like, why are you asking me to condemn these things when there's a power imbalance and like your style of conversation, condemn this, condemn that.
You condemn what Hamas did.
You've already asked me that.
Not directly. You haven't answered.
I will not condemn people based on Israeli military talking points.
Okay, good.
But I have a question for you.
You don't condemn mass murder.
Obviously, I condemn mass murder.
You won't condemn it by Hamas.
You're talking about a specific political context in which the information.
No, I'm talking about mass murder of people on October the 7th.
By the Israeli military.
It's just absurd.
So I have a question for you.
Oh my God.
So I have a question for you. I'm not concerned about whether you think or don't think about credibility.
It's not come of this from supporting either over the other.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Are you sure about that?
Absolutely.
I have a question.
What's your question?
Rupert Murdoch,
Yeah.
News Corp International, which employed you for several years, which actually it employs you now.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting to the...
Oh my God, is he doing the Zionist cabal funding for Piers Morgan too?
Yes. What do you think the issue is? I saw you tweeted. What does that have to do with me?
Not my tweets. I have a question for you. News Corp International had a charitable arm which funded the Jerusalem Foundation, which builds illegal settlements in...
What's it got to do?
Oh my God, dude! This guy didn't spend any time to preparing talking points and preparing rhetoric or learning how to debate. He just sat at his computer trying to scouring for any connection at all that he has to the that both these people have to the Zionist cabal.
Do you condemn Rupert Murdoch?
What's it got to do with me?
Do you condemn Rupert Murdoch?
I'm not talking about Rupert Murdoch.
Do you condemn Rupert Murdoch?
I'm not talking about Rupert Murdoch.
This has never been shown on British
Oh my
media.
God, he's got the receipts, bro. Yeah, follow the money.
This is a letter from Netanyahu's political office. And Brigitte may well recognize the handwriting of Benjamin Netanyahu here. It is a list of individuals that Netanyahu considered to be funders of his political campaign. There is a name on this list. The name is Rupert Murdoch.
Damn.
It seems he funded Benjamin Netanyahu. That's an issue.
You know what? It's not an issue for me.
It's an issue. And actually, it's in the interest of objectivity
understand one thing.
that you stated.
Rupert Murdoch can speak for himself. You've got a problem with him. Take it up with him.
I do.
I can tell you categorically, he has never had a single conversation with me about anything I put on Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Sam kindly resigned from the Times newspaper because of Murdoch's investment
Fine.
and bias.
Do you have a problem?
This document, this letter,
you're a rapper,
clearly
right?
shows Benjamin Netanyahu noting Rupert Murdoch, considering him to be a funder of his political.
You're a rapper.
That's an issue.
You're a rapper. You condemn P. Diddy.
Yes.
Right. You see how easy it is? You take it out of your obsession, which is that you hate Israel so much you can't condemn anything that people do to them.
We see the situation differently.
Not really.
Actually, my loyalty is to the people.
I agree with you a lot more. I agree with you a lot more than you realise.
I view myself as loyal to the people of the camps, to the people under the bombs. I do not view myself as loyal to somebody that would end up on a list of potential funders of Benjamin Netanyahu.
I like Rupert Murdoch enormously. I respect him enormously.
And you won't condemn his funding of murder of Netanyahu. You won't condemn his funding of Netanyahu.
You don't condemn mass murder.
You don't condemn mass murder.
Oh, I do.
Condemn the Israeli military for mass murder of Israeli captives.
Had you bothered to watch this program for the last year, you would see I've regularly condemned them.
God, the term murder is being used in a funny way here. The term murder, like unjustified killing, it's kind of just being used to refer to like any dead people at all.
Biggest resistance.
I think the vast majority of humanity perceive asymmetrical warfare by developed militaries against the vast majority of humanity are post-colonial sub.
Why? Again, now he's doing there's gotta be a term for this. He's obfuscating with well, I think the vast majority of people do support abortions at 9 months. Well, personally, I wouldn't do it. Well, I think the vast majority of people don't support.
They came out of decolonization. So their conception of these issues is just not the same as yours, unfortunately.
We will have to disagree, but that's fine.
Only way Palestinians can win against Israelis is to stage nonviolent protest and get the media to painting Israelis as savages.
I appreciate it too.
Well, I mean, ironically, Palestinian Gandhi probably would work. It seems like in the past when there have been more peaceful Arab leaders, they've been forced to reconcile with that and make peace with them. They made peace with Egypt, even after at the end of the height of nationalism that happened after the 6-Day War, because they had the Sadat, right? I think it was Sadat. It was because Nasser died and then Sadat took power. Yeah.
Listen, the story won't go away. Come back. We'll debate it again.
Thank you.
But remember, I agree with more than you think with what you say.
Okay.
All right. But at some point, you've got to have a little bit of something about you that says that some things that people do to Israel can also be wrong. You don't think so?
I mean, you're misrepresenting my.
Am I? Yeah. You think of one thing people have done to Israel that's wrong?
I think giving it $8.7 billion is terrorist.
So no attack on Israel has ever been anything but justified.
Wow, well, nice dodge there, buddy. Nice one. You found something. Good one.
That's not my question. It's unsustainable.
You think of one thing? Is there one thing that's been done to Israel that you think is wrong?
Not right now.
Okay.
And that's, I'll let you know.
In its way, Lowkey, that's very illuminating.
No problem.
Good to see you. Thanks.
Oh boy. Oh brother. Oh brother. If you want to chat with me live, sub here or go to Nonfon420 on Twitch or Kick via the links below. Once again, please like and sub to help with the algorithm, and consider sending a donation through YouTube Super Thanks to directly support me, and I'll make sure to reply to any question you ask. See you guys next time.